A German shepherd lay curled up tightly, shielding two tiny puppies against her trembling body. Her breath was weak, her fur coated in frost. She had been there all day. Sarah had seen her that morning on her way to work, but she had walked past, assuming someone else would help. Now, as she returned home, the sight made her stomach twist. The mother hadn't moved, the puppies barely stirred, and in that moment, Sarah realized if she didn't act now, they wouldn't survive the night. The morning air was crisp, biting against Sarah Collins' exposed skin as she stepped outside her apartment. The streets were already busy, filled with people bundled in thick coats, their heads bowed against the cold wind. Snow covered the sidewalks, crunching under hurried footsteps, but no one paid attention to anything other than their own path. Sarah wrapped her scarf tighter around her neck and glanced at her phone. 8:32 a.m. She was running late. She picked up her pace, her boots clicking against the pavement as she hurried toward the bus stop. The sky was a dull gray, promising more snow before the day was over. As she walked past the entrance of a narrow alley, something caught her eye, a dark shape huddled against the brick wall. A German shepherd. The dog was curled up tightly, its fur matted with dirt and snow, its body shivering from the cold. At first, Sarah assumed it was just another stray. But then she noticed something else. Two tiny figures were pressed against the dog's belly. Puppies. Her steps slowed as she took in the scene. The mother's body was curved protectively around them, shielding them from the harsh wind. The puppies were impossibly small, their fur barely visible beneath their mother's warmth. Every few seconds, one of them would let out a weak, almost soundless whimper. Sarah hesitated. Her first instinct was to stop. But as she glanced at her phone again, she felt a twinge of guilt. She was already late for work. If she stopped now, she'd miss the bus. Besides, maybe the dog wasn't abandoned. Plenty of people in this neighborhood owned pets. Maybe her owner had just left her here for a few minutes while they ran an errand. Maybe someone would come back for her soon. Sarah took a deep breath, shoving down the uneasy feeling in her chest. Someone else will help. She turned away and quickened her pace, forcing herself not to look back. The hours at work passed in a blur. Emails, meetings, reports, everything blended together. But no matter how much she tried to focus, Sarah couldn't shake the image of the German shepherd from her mind. She thought of the way the dog had curled herself around her puppies. How still she had been, as if the weight of exhaustion had already overtaken her. Was she really waiting for someone? Or had she given up hope that anyone would stop? By the time Sarah finished work, night had fallen. The city was quieter now, the streets dusted with fresh snow. She pulled her coat tighter as she stepped off the bus, her breath forming small clouds in the freezing air. As she made her way toward her apartment, a nagging thought gnawed at the back of her mind. What if she's still there? She told herself she was being ridiculous. Hours had passed. There was no way the dog would still be in that same spot. But as she approached the alleyway, her heart dropped. The German shepherd was still there, still curled up in the same position, her body now dusted with a thin layer of snow. The puppies, barely visible against her belly, hadn't moved. Sarah's stomach twisted. She slowed her steps, her pulse quickening. The streetlights cast a dim glow over the alley, highlighting the unnatural stillness of the mother dog. Her ears barely twitched at Sarah's approach. Sarah knelt down beside her. "Hey there, sweetheart," she murmured. The dog lifted her head slightly, her deep brown eyes meeting Sarah's for the briefest moment before she let out a weak sigh and closed them again. Up close, Sarah could see just how bad her condition was. Her ribs jutted out beneath her thick fur. Her breathing was slow and labored, and her nose was dry and cracked. She had been out here for too long. The puppies, nestled tightly against their mother, weren't doing much better. Their tiny bodies trembled with each breath, their whimpers barely audible. Sarah swallowed hard, guilt pressing into her chest like a weight. How many people had walked past them today? How many had seen this mother fighting to keep her babies alive and had chosen to ignore it, just like she had? She reached out, hesitating for just a moment before gently running her fingers over the mother's fur. It was ice cold. The dog barely reacted, only letting out a soft, exhausted whimper. Sarah knew she couldn't leave them here. She had walked away once. She wouldn't do it again. She removed her scarf and carefully wrapped it around the puppies, trying to give them some warmth. The mother let out another faint sound, but this time, It wasn't a whimper, it was relief. Sarah exhaled slowly. "You're coming with me," she whispered. The mother dog didn't resist. She was too weak to fight anymore. Sarah knew she had to act fast. Sarah's heart pounded as she knelt beside the German Shepherd, her scarf wrapped around the shivering puppies. The mother dog's eyes fluttered open for a moment before closing again. Her breathing shallow and uneven. She was beyond exhaustion, her body drained from days, maybe weeks, of starvation and exposure. Sarah knew she had to act quickly. If she hesitated, if she wasted even another moment, the freezing cold could take them. But she had a problem. The mother was too weak to walk, and carrying her along with the two puppies would be difficult. She had no carrier, no way to transport them all at once. Her apartment was only a few blocks away, but in this bitter cold, even that short distance felt like an impossible challenge. Taking a deep breath, she made a decision. Carefully, she scooped up the puppies and tucked them inside her coat, pressing them against the warmth of her body. They barely reacted, their tiny limbs stiff from the cold. Then, she turned to the mother. "Come on, girl," she whispered, reaching under the dog's frail body. The German Shepherd whimpered softly as Sarah tried to lift her. The dog wasn't heavy, but carrying her while ensuring the puppies stayed warm was no easy task. She adjusted her grip, wrapping her arms around the mother's thin frame, and slowly pushed herself to her feet. The weight of the dog in her arms made her stagger, but she held firm, step by step. Just get home. The walk back to her apartment felt endless. The cold air bit at her face, and the snow-covered pavement made each step treacherous. She moved as fast as she could, but the burden in her arms slowed her down. Passers-by glanced at her, some with mild curiosity, others with indifference. No one stopped to ask if she needed help. Sarah didn't care. She tightened her grip on the dog, whispering reassurances. "Just hold on, girl, we're almost there." The German Shepherd let out another weak whimper, her body trembling. Sarah felt panic creep into her chest. She could feel how fragile the dog was, how dangerously cold her body had become. Finally, after what felt like forever, she reached her apartment building. With great effort, she fumbled for her keys, almost dropping them in her haste. When she finally got the door open, she rushed inside, shutting out the freezing air behind her. Warmth. Finally, she hurried to the living room, carefully laying the mother dog on a thick blanket near the heater. The puppies, still wrapped inside her coat, needed warmth too. She knelt down and gently placed them beside their mother. The German Shepherd let out a low, exhausted sigh, her body sinking into the blanket. The puppies nuzzled against her, still shivering but slowly responding to the warmth. Sarah exhaled in relief, but she knew the battle wasn't over yet. She ran to the kitchen, grabbing a bowl and filling it with warm, not hot, water. When she returned, she knelt beside the mother dog and held the bowl close to her nose. "Come on, sweetheart, you need to drink." For a moment, the dog didn't move. Then, weakly, she sniffed the water, her tongue flicked out, barely touching the surface. Sarah held her breath. The German Shepherd hesitated, then slowly began to lap up the water, her movements slow and shaky. Relief flooded Sarah's chest. "You're doing great," she whispered, after the mother had taken a few sips. Sarah turned to the puppies. They were too small to drink from a bowl, and they needed something more than water, they needed nourishment. She grabbed a clean towel and gently dried them off, rubbing their tiny bodies to get their circulation going. Then, she hurried to the kitchen, searching through her supplies. She had a bottle and some puppy formula left over from the last time she had fostered a litter. She quickly warmed the formula and filled the bottle, testing the temperature on her wrist before returning to the puppies. She picked up the first one, cradling it in her hands. It barely moved, its body limp with exhaustion. Carefully, she brought the bottle to its mouth. "Come on, little one," she murmured. "You have to drink." For a few agonizing seconds, nothing happened. Then, the puppy's tiny mouth latched onto the nipple of the bottle. Weakly sucking, Sarah almost cried in relief. She fed both puppies, watching as their fragile bodies slowly gained warmth. By the time she was done, the mother dog was watching her with tired, but grateful, eyes. Sarah reached out and stroked her head gently. "You're safe now," she whispered. The German Shepherd let out a soft sigh, her body finally relaxing. For the first time in a long while, she wasn't alone. The dim light of dawn filtered through Sarah's apartment window, casting a soft glow over the small living room. She had spent the entire night watching over the German Shepherd and her 2 puppies, afraid that if she took her eyes off them for even a second, something terrible might happen. The mother dog, though still weak, was breathing steadily now. The puppies, wrapped in a warm blanket beside her, had stopped shivering, their tiny bodies rising and falling in rhythm with their slow, exhausted breaths. Sarah let out a quiet sigh of relief. For the first time since she had carried them inside, she allowed herself to relax. But she knew their fight wasn't over yet. They needed medical attention. She reached for her phone and quickly searched for the nearest veterinary clinic that would be open this early. After finding one, she grabbed a pet carrier from her storage closet, the same one she had used for fostering rescue animals in the past. Gently, she lifted the mother dog, wrapping her in a soft blanket before placing her inside the carrier. The dog let out a low whimper but didn't resist. She was too tired to fight. Sarah then carefully picked up the puppies, tucking them inside a smaller, padded bag to keep them warm. She zipped up her coat and braced herself for the cold before stepping out into the early morning air. The clinic was only a 10-minute drive away, but it felt like an eternity. As soon as Sarah arrived, she rushed inside, her heart pounding. A receptionist looked up in surprise as Sarah hurried toward the front desk. "I found them last night," Sarah explained, her voice filled with urgency. "They've been out in the cold for who knows how long. They're weak. I don't know if they'll make it." The receptionist didn't waste time. She called for a vet. And within moments, a woman in a white coat appeared, her expression turning serious as she took in the sight of the fragile mother dog and her puppies. "Bring them in," the vet said, leading Sarah into an exam room. Sarah set the mother dog down on the examination table, stepping back as the vet and her assistants got to work. The mother barely stirred as the vet ran her hands gently over her frail body, checking her heartbeat, her temperature, her hydration levels. One of the assistants took the puppies, placing them under a small heating pad to keep their body temperature stable. Sarah stood in the corner, watching anxiously. After what felt like hours, the vet finally turned to her. "She's severely malnourished and dehydrated," she said. "She's also suffering from hypothermia. But she's a fighter. We'll put her on fluids immediately." Sarah exhaled, her hands tightening into fists at her sides. "And the puppies?" she asked. The vet gave her a small, reassuring smile. "They're weak, but they have a chance. They just need warmth, food, and constant care." Sarah nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. "I want to take care of them," she said firmly. "Whatever they need, I'll do it." The vet studied her for a moment before nodding. "That's good to hear. But first, let's stabilize them. We'll keep them here for monitoring today. And if everything goes well, you can take them home tomorrow." Sarah felt a pang of relief. The battle wasn't over, but at least now, they had a fighting chance. The next 24 hours were agonizing. Sarah checked her phone constantly, waiting for updates from the vet. When she finally received the call the next morning, her heart leapt into her throat. "They made it through the night," the vet told her. "The mother is still weak, but she's responding to treatment. The puppies have started nursing again." Tears pricked Sarah's eyes. An hour later, she was at the clinic, ready to take them home. The mother dog, though still weak, lifted her head slightly when she saw Sarah. Sarah knelt beside her and smiled softly. "Let's get you home," she whispered. The soft hum of the car engine filled the air as Sarah carefully drove back home, glancing every few seconds at the German Shepherd and her puppies in the back seat. The mother dog was still weak, her head resting on the edge of the pet carrier. But there was something different in her eyes now. The emptiness Sarah had seen before was slowly being replaced with something else, hope. The puppies were curled up together inside a warm blanket, their tiny bodies rising and falling with each breath. They had made it through the worst. Now, they just needed time, love, and care to heal. As soon as Sarah pulled into her driveway, she gently lifted the carrier and brought them inside. The warmth of her apartment welcomed them once again, shielding them from the cold world outside. She set up a soft, cozy bed near the heater and carefully placed the mother dog and her puppies onto it. The German Shepherd let out a weak sigh and laid her head down, her body finally able to relax. "You're safe now," Sarah whispered, kneeling beside her. She spent the rest of the day making sure they had everything they needed. She prepared warm meals for the mother, who was too weak to eat much but managed to take small bites. The puppies, now stronger, nuzzled against their mother, their tiny tails twitching slightly as they fed. Day by day, they began to recover. The mother, whom Sarah decided to name Luna, slowly regained her strength. At first, she was hesitant, always watching Sarah with cautious eyes, unsure if she could trust this new life. But as the days passed, she started to relax. She no longer flinched when Sarah reached out to pet her. She started eating more, and one evening, as Sarah sat beside her, Luna lifted her head and licked Sarah's hand for the first time. It was small, but it meant everything. The puppies, whom Sarah named Milo and Daisy, grew stronger with each passing day. They stumbled around on their tiny legs, exploring their new home, their playful barks filling the once quiet apartment with life. Sarah knew she had made the right decision. Weeks later, as she watched Luna lying peacefully by the window, her puppies playfully tumbling over each other at her feet, Sarah realized something. That night, when she had first seen them on the street, Luna hadn't just been protecting her puppies, she had been waiting for someone to save them. And in the end, she had found more than just shelter. She had found a home. Sarah reached out and gently stroked Luna's fur. "You're part of the family now," she whispered. Luna let out a content sigh and nuzzled closer. She understood. She was home.
What do you think about today's story? Do you believe situations like this can happen in real life? If you have any thoughts or feedback, feel free to leave a comment below. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you won't miss any exciting stories. See you in the next video.